This is reality, man. Don't hide nothing.
In the last 2 decades, Billy Jack would appear in several shoot-style interviews, some of which he would talk about multiple conspiracy theories, and even admit to being involved in unsolved murder.
I'm not here to win friends and influence people. This is the toughest sport in the world, pro wrestling. And I'm not out to hurt anybody at all. I'm out to break their neck and take them out of here. Because that's what I come here for. Punk is for the unified title. And this week, I'm taking that home too. Everybody else can kiss my butt.
Billy later on would claim he had been witness to a high-profile unsolved case referred to as the Boys on the Tracks, which took place in August of 1987 and involved a high-profile politician.
There are an awful lot of stories involving murders about Billy Jack Haynes. He was trained by Stu Hart in the Hart Dungeon in the early 80s when Billy Jack Haynes...
All the best men are made.
He was described at the time in the 80s as he was huge, he was good looking, and he was muscular.
Right.
And that would get you pretty much to the top of the card during the 80s in wrestling.
I'm Billy Jack Haynes, former World Wrestling Federation wrestler. Today I come with no mask, I come with no hidden voice, I come to you straight face to face because this is reality, man. Don't hide nothing. 30 years ago, I witnessed the murder of 2 teenagers on the railroad tracks August 23rd in Alexander, Arkansas. 27 years of that, I was a drug addict on pain pill medication. I become clean. It kept bothering me and bothering me and bothering me, and finally, here I am coming forward.
So Billy Jack Haynes says that, yes, these 2 boys were walking through the woods and they stumbled upon them while they were all out there. No one has ever been charged with these killings. It's one of
Absolutely
those
dreadful.
awful...
Next time I flew down, they wanted me to come down on my own, meet Barry Shield, and Barry Shield had a politician that he wanted me to meet. When a man walked in with what looked like 2 bodyguards who walked ahead and set up about 20 feet ahead of us. And the man was Bill Clinton. I didn't know who he was.
To the head investigator who was working the case, Billy Jack Haynes took a lie detector test, and it came back inconclusive because at the time, Billy had some health issues affecting the test. But it was taken into account Billy would essentially be risking his freedom and possibly his life by coming forward, and knew some of the people directly involved. 3 law enforcement officers, 2 attorneys/politicians, and a bouncer for a local nightclub. He also named the governor as having directed the event, went as far as to meet with the mother of one of the victims and a private investigator working the case. ProWrestling.net does say Haynes is not listed as having worked for the WWF live events for the night in question. He also worked a couple nights later at a taping in San Francisco, which would be an airtight alibi for where he wasn't. On August 27, 1987, the bodies of 16-year-old Don Henry and 17-year-old Kevin Ives were hit by a cargo train in Alexander, Arkansas, as they lay on the tracks. Dan Harmon, a prosecutor of the case, who was later arrested for dealing drugs, is one person implicated in the murder. In January of 2018, Billy Jack Haynes came forward on the Doc Washburn Show, claiming to have been involved in the drug business and a witness to the murders, and even videotaped it.
One of the single shadiest people outside of the ring. So he claims that during his time in the WWF, he was actually a major cocaine dealer who was working with the Medina cartel that was, I think, Pablo Escobar's joint. It gets better. In 2018, Billy Jack Haynes sensationally admitted witnessing the 1987 murder of 2 teen boys, and he claimed that senior US politicians covered it up to hide their links with cocaine trafficking. This murder was in August 1987, at a time when Billy Jack Haynes was working for the WWF. In August 1987 at 4 in the morning, the bodies of 16-year-old Don Henry and 17-year-old Kevin Ives were hit by a cargo train in Alexander, Arkansas, as they lay on the tracks. The train driver had attempted to stop the train. He blew the horn. There was no response. So the police arrive on the scene. The train driver says, I think as I was approaching those bodies, they were wrapped in a green tarpaulin, and they couldn't find a tarpaulin anywhere on the scene.
Right.
The boys had apparently left their houses to go hunting. The deaths were initially ruled as an accident, They were exhumed the following year, 1988, and it was ruled that homicide was more likely.
Right.
So 30 years later, in 2018, Billy Jack Haynes came forward and said, August 23rd, 1987, I was on the railroad tracks in Alexander, Arkansas, and I witnessed everything that happened to those two young boys on the tracks. He says that the two were murdered after stumbling upon a drug deal that involved corrupt cops and high-level US politicians. Billy Jack Haynes said, in August of 87, I was contacted by the Arkansas criminal politician and was asked if I could provide muscle for an Arkansas drug drop. Who do you think that Arkansas politician who contacted Billy Jack Haynes was?
In 2018, he had a meeting with Gene Duffy, who was head of the task force for the law enforcement community in Arkansas. According to the detective's homepage, he stated in his comments, Billy Jack Haynes got up to walk out of his first and last meeting with Gene Duffy after she insulted him when he tried to answer Duffy's question. What happened on the tracks when the boys were murdered? Billy Jack started telling Duffy his life story. To put context into his life leading to Kevin and Don's murders, when Billy Jack began his story, he mentioned his blind dad. Gene Duffy rudely said, I don't care about your blind dad. I want to know about the boys' murders. The statement really upset Billy. His father was his hero. Without answering any further questions, Billy walked out before the interview was over. The case still remains unsolved.
A former drug trafficker, I'm ashamed to say, and a hired enforcer. In the late 70s and early 1980s, when I was in my 30s, I stood 6'3" and weighed between 260 and 300 pounds. I was very visually intimidating. I'm not proud to say that. In the 1980s, I transported and trafficked large quantities of cocaine throughout the United States of America. I bought cocaine from the largest drug trafficker in the United States, Barry Seal, out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I would then sell that cocaine to contacts around the United States. Barry Seal later introduced me to a politician drug dealer from Arkansas. In 1984, that politician drug dealer asked me to kill David Kennedy, who I later learned was the son of very well-known politician Robert F. Kennedy, the brother of President John F. Kennedy. I was also an enforcer who provided muscle to other parts of the criminal element to ensure that their illegal business dealings were collected upon. In August of 1987, I was contacted by the Arkansas criminal politician and was asked if I would provide muscle at an Arkansas drug stop. The criminal politician suspected that some drug money drops were being stolen. He suspected that the state police officers were involved in the thefts in Arkansas. I agreed to assist with security at the drug drop site. While conducting security for the drug money drop, I witnessed the murders of two young boys, Kevin Ives and Don Henry. They were murdered by other individuals who were working for the same criminal politician. Their bodies were placed on the railroad tracks to be mutilated by a passing train. In late 2016, I contacted Linda Ives and informed her that I was on the railroad tracks, and when her son was murdered, I was there. I have since met Larry and Linda Ives and their private investigator, Keith Ronsaval. I gave them a statement outing everything that I knew about their sons and Don Henry's murders. In my statement, I named 3 local enforcement officers, 2 local attorneys, politicians, and a local bar owner as those being on the scene of the murders in 1987. I also named the criminal politician who directed the events at the scene via cell phone with one of the attorneys, politicians, and me.
Basically, Billy Jack Haynes is brought in because they say, we want some muscle to work out if anyone tries to steal our drugs, we want you to help us out. I mean, yes, they've got the whole of the local law enforcement involved in this as well.
only was to tape. He got me a VHS tape recorder and 2 tapes. I put 1 tape in my suit. I had a suit on and jacket. Film the drop and see who's stealing these drops. If we do catch them, we'll put them in the van, drive them back, cuff them up, and it'd be my job at that time to beat both of them to death at a set location away from the governor's mansion.
Jim Cornette would state, Billy Jack was a different type of guy. I always thought he was a pleasant man to be around. I never had a problem with him. He would also state, Billy had somewhat of a temper, and as the story goes, he had killed a guy by knocking him down with a goofy punch and gotten into trouble over it, and as a result always tried to keep his temper in check. He is very soft-spoken and very calm guy in the locker room. I always enjoy my conversations with Billy Jack and never had a problem with him in the world, and I would prefer not piss him off for anything.
Billy Jack's main gimmick, which he would take through pretty much his biggest sort of part of his career in the WWF, was he wore a hat. He had a black hat that had a band on it, and that was it. That was just the
That's
thing.
all you need.
Now, he refers to that hat as being a very good gimmick. He felt it was the centre of another sort of like classic Billy Jack Haynes story, when he was in Florida and he came back from his match to find that someone had taken his hat and they had filled it in the toilet full of shit.
Right.
He blamed Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo. They had been WWF Tag Team Champions fairly recently. Windham said to him, "Come on, man, you can't take a rib." And Billy Jack Haynes said, "You have got 2 seconds to defend yourself." He then knocked Barry Windham out. He smashed his head into the sink repeatedly, and Mike Rotundo tried to drag Billy Jack Haynes off. As Billy Jack Haynes turned around, Mike Rotundo, better known as IRS, ran out, in the words of Billy Jack Haynes, like a chicken shit.